Well, I'm a legend in my own mind, uh, which is no. I appreciate it, Josh. I do a lot of different things as an adventurer. So be realistic, be passionate. Again, you're going to get a lot of no's. If it's something unusual, people don't understand it. You have to educate them as to why you want to do it.
In today's episode of the Hero Front podcast, we sit down with Jim Clash. From climbing the Matterhorn to testing bulletproof clothing in Colombia, his experiences don't just push the envelope, they redefine it. Jim Clash has made a career of going where few dare to go. From racing legends like Mario Andretti to extreme moments in aviation, Jim's lived a life many only dream of. He's interviewed some of the most incredible figures in history, sharing unique stories and uncovering hidden moments that make us rethink what's possible. From physics to adventure journalism, Jim's path wasn't a straight line, but it led to some of the most thrilling stories we've ever heard.
I mean, I can give you an example. Bill Anders took that amazing Earthrise photo, the Earth rising over the moon, which was the photo of the 20th century. Mm-hmm. And when I interviewed him, I said, what were you thinking at that moment? You took that picture. He said, you really...
Jim's ability to uncover the human side of the biggest moments in history is what makes his work so unique. Whether it's space or adventure, he gets people to share the things they've never revealed before.
So I just want people to know that if you work hard and you can be an average guy, you can do all the things I've done, because I'm not special at all. But I've managed to take average and make it look interesting.
Hell yeah. What's up, Josh here, and I got a quick update for you before we get back to the episode. Just give me 30 seconds of your time, because there's two things that I just have to say to you. And the first is just a tremendous thank you from the bottom of my heart for listening and tuning into the show week after week. It means the world to us, and it really is a dream come true to not only be sharing the incredible stories of these guests, but to then inspire so many of you listeners. It has become my life's purpose, and I cannot thank you enough for supporting me and so many others on this journey of positivity. But secondly, it's a dream where I feel like we are just getting started and the sky is the limit. I am so excited to see where this goes, and I'm so blessed to have you on this journey. And if you appreciate this message, if you appreciate what we do here at the Hero Front podcast, please follow us on this app. Hit subscribe. Now, if you do that, here's the promise that I'm going to make to you. I am going to do everything in my power to make this show as good as I possibly can now and going forward. We're going to deliver the guests that you want me to speak to. We're going to have the topics that you want to hear about. And of course, we're going to keep doing all the things that you've always loved about the podcast. Thank you from the bottom of my heart.
Hi, Josh. Jim Clash. You probably don't know me that well, but I'm an adventure journalist at Forbes. I'm out here at Eglin Air Force Base to fly an F-16. It's been pushed back a couple of days because of equipment. So I'm here with you doing a podcast. I'm happy to be here.
Absolutely, Jim. Thank you for coming on the Hero Front podcast. We had a chance encounter, but immediately I was drawn to your, what I call rock star energy. I mean, you just had that vibe about you. You like rock and roll. You have a great taste in music. And you immediately started telling me all the adventures you've been on. And as someone who likes to travel and have been to many different countries, I've never heard or met anyone that has done what you've done. I think you are truly one of a kind. And so I want to thank you for coming on Hero Front and sharing with my audience the cool shit that you do.
Well, I'm a legend in my own mind. Which is no, I appreciate it, Josh. I do a lot of different things as an adventurer. My job as a writer is to go do the 60-foot wave or whatever it is, and then write it up. And if you read it, I want you to feel like you were out there with me. And if I do that, I've done my job. So I've been doing the adventure column now with Forbes for about 30 years. So I've accumulated a number of different things in the exotic and extreme areas of adventure.
Absolutely. So, Jim, you have a very long story, and you've told me a lot of different cliff notes of it. But before we get into the epic stuff, what I like to call, I want to take it back a little bit because kind of what we were discussing earlier. I had this just genuine curiosity and interest in someone like you on a little bit about your background, your childhood, and how you got to Forbes and to do all this amazing things.
That's a long story. I'll try to give you the short version.
Okay.
I was born in Tokyo, Japan. My father was a civilian with the service with the Army. I moved to the States when 4 years old at the time. I moved to Maryland. Had a pretty normal Wonder Years kind of growing up experience. I wasn't in a rich family. I wasn't in a poor family. I come from middle class America. As a kid, of course, I played sports, football, ran track, all that. But I was kind of like interested in physics and science, kind of a geek almost. And, I used to launch SD's model rockets. I built a laser in 9th grade. They didn't know what it was, so they gave me first prize in the science fair. I'd never seen anything like that. It's like 1969 or something. I had a ham radio license. I built radios and talked to people all over the world. And I think especially the ham radio got me interested in other countries and experiences. I love the Olympics. I watched the athletes, and I was an athlete. So if I had to go back and think what made me start this adventure career, that would be, I think, the kernel. From there I went to public high school, undergrad at University of Maryland, was a physics major. The math was too much, so I became an English journalism major. I wrote for the newspaper there, became the editor of the literary magazine, wrote short stories, went the whole 5 yards, and then I got a job out of undergrad at an airline magazine. Did that for a couple years, lost a bunch of money in the silver market, realized I didn't know anything about business, so I got my MBA at Columbia in New York, and immediately went to work for an ad agency, Gray Advertising, on the Procter & Gamble business, very boring. I did the ad business for a couple of years, different agencies on Madison Avenue in New York. I had this side gig as a rock guy. I was a drummer, and we had done some parody stuff in business school and then in the ad business. So I formed a band called the VPs. We were all business execs by day. By night, we were rock and rollers. We put on sunglasses like the Blues Brothers. We wore our suits. And we played songs like Secret Agent Man, Madison Avenue Man. We played,
That's awesome.
Stockbroker on the Line to Love Potion #9. So it was this business parody, and we got picked up by the press. We were in USA Today, New York Times Magazine, BBC, Good Morning America, all this stuff. And we actually put out some records, video. We were on BBC, NHK. It started going all over the world. It was crazy.
That's amazing.
But it gave me an outlet for my creative energy, which I didn't get in the ad business. I had a account executive job, so it wasn't the creatives who created the ads. It was more the managing of the research and the creative and the media and all that with the client. And Procter & Gamble's a little bit how can I say? They're a little bit boring. So from there, I just decided to try the band. I went down to Wall Street, raised $100,000, put the company together, put out the records, recorded them, put out a TV commercial, a direct response network, sold the albums, via late 1-800-BizRock numbers and stuff like that. And, it was great until the market crashed in '87. And the yuppies who were parodying, it wasn't funny anymore. They were losing their jobs. So we kind of disbanded. And interestingly, the woman who produced the Good Morning America piece with Ron Reagan, her sister worked at Forbes. I said, you want to go back into journalism? I can get you an interview at Forbes. You're going to take a lot less money than you were making in the ad business, but you'll have a start. And I did, and I got a job there as a reporter.
At that time, was Forbes as, notable as they are now, or were they a little bit more low-key then?
They were more notable, in my opinion. Malcolm Forbes had really made Forbes a name with Elizabeth Taylor and all of his parties and the yacht and the plane, the capitalist tool and all that stuff. By the time I got there, Malcolm had been dead for 3 years. Steve Forbes, his son, had taken over. He had one of his sons. And it was the heyday of the magazine. I mean, we were putting out huge issues every 2 weeks. Forbes 400 was very, very popular, the Billionaires issue. So I would say back then, before the internet, we were one of the premier magazines in the world.
So this was super exciting for you.
Oh, yeah. It was, pinch me kind of stuff. And, they wanted me initially as a business writer because of my MBA and my experience in the ad world. So I did that. But then I had this little passion on the side of climbing mountains. And I went out and climbed the Matterhorn. And they said, hey, why don't you write it up in the back of the book? Because we do have a back of the book called the lifestyle section, and advertisers like that. And in the front of the book, you write your investing story. So you tell people in the front how to make money, tell them in the back how to spend it.
I love that concept. And I love that they use your natural skill set and your natural interest to help the magazine even better. I mean, that's not every boss would entertain that. So the fact that they saw that in you and leveraged it, I think is, kudos to them.
Well, don't think it was easy. They'd never had an extreme adventure writer before, so that was a new concept. There's a lot of jealousy on the staff because I got to do these cool things that they didn't. And I'd always say, hey, you want to go drive a car 200 miles an hour? You think you can do it? And you think you can write about it? Go for it. I'm not stopping you. So I had a lot of hurdles internally to jump over, but I eventually reached a critical mass where the advertisers just wanted to run their ads against my copy. So that's when I started to really get a foothold in that adventure area.
What would you say was the turning point where you did get your foothold? Was it a certain article, a trip?
So many footholds. I think, when I went to Antarctica to mountain climb Virgin Mountains, that kind of was so exotic that people were like, whoa, and they took a step back. Here at the pole, you're climbing mountains they've never been climbed before. You're on crossing the Drake Passage on a ship, the most rough seas in the world. Then it started, and the problem was in the beginning, I didn't drive race cars or surf or do anything exotic other than mountain climbing. And they were like, you can't just do mountains. You got to expand. So I brought into aviation, the fighter jets and a lot of Air Force stories, a lot of stuff with the surfers and water stuff, submersibles, skiing to the South Pole, swimming at the North Pole, just a lot of different stuff, driving Bugattis. And the more of that I did, the more I got a reputation, the more people came to me with ideas. In the beginning, as you know, you're pushing yourself out there. Hey, let me do this because. And then Forbes would work out a deal with them. We wouldn't do it for free, but we'd get a media rate. And look, if you've been doing this 30 years and you do 5 of these a year, do the math.
Yeah, that's
it adds up over time. And oh yeah, that year I went out and got shot. That's right, by that guy down in South America. Or I went bullfighting and broke 3 ribs. Or I went figure skating with Sasha Cohen. I mean, there are just so many things that I can draw upon. And on a show like this, it's very hard to sort of pick some things out. If you ask me to.
Well, I am asking you to.
What do you want? Ask me directly.
So, as we're talking in passing, you have so many stories, and I know you could pull from so many different. But we talked a little bit about mountains. Let's talk about some of the cars that you've been in. And I noticed you love speed.
Yeah.
You love going fast. You've done it in airplanes. You've done it in cars. So I'd love to hear your adventures in vehicles when you started to expand, and your adventures with aviation.
Well, I mean, I was a track guy. I was a sprinter, so I was always into speed. I used to run the 100 yards in 10 flat, not the 100 meters. That would be really fast. For
you would have been in the Olympics.
Usain Bolt stuff. But no, I like fast cars like a lot of kids did. And one of my goals was to drive 200 miles an hour because as a teenager, I'd seen Tom Sneva at Indianapolis run the first 200 mile an hour average lap, which at one point no one thought could be done. And it was a big deal in the whole motorsports area. And so I was impressionable. I said, someday I want to do that. And my friends are like, you're nuts. So I went to a number of different racing schools and I wrote about them for Forbes, whether it's Formula One or IndyCar, NASCAR. And I got a lot of experience, and I finally did get a shot at averaging a 200 mile an hour lap at Texas Motor Speedway. It was so dangerous, the Indy Car Racing League told me, you can't do it. I got a track that would let me do it, a guy who'd let me use his car, a real team owner, Sam Schmidt. I raised money for charity to do it, 25 grand for Sam Schmidt Paralysis Foundation, and I went out and I did it. And I'd had so many laps on that track because of Bob Lutz, the owner of the Mary Andretti Racing School, let me do it because he believed in my dream. And I'd written about his school. So Yeah, it was amazing to do that. I mean, you're pulling a couple G's in the corners, you're graying out, you got to hit your marks. You're doing a football field a second.
That's amazing.
And you have a car that's no top on it. So that to me was like, of all the things I've done in anything, I would consider that the most dangerous and the one where I really had to use skill to do it, as opposed to riding in the back of an F-16. I'm not the pilot. It's interesting. It's you know, it's crazy physically, and I have to write about it, but no, I'm not controlling the plane. So that one was a big one. I drove a Bugatti once at 253 miles an hour, but that was on a straightaway at a big track in Germany. I've driven over 200 on the Autobahn in Porsches. Somebody sent me an article the other day that says I have the seventh and fifth fastest recorded times ever on the Autobahn.
Wow.
No idea. I had no idea. 201.
I'm sure there's many records that you have no idea about.
Yeah, that's a whole other. Don't get me going on Guinness World Records and all the bullshit that's involved in that.
Oh, no.
I don't want any of those.
Okay. So, yes, going fast. You know, another thing I noticed about you, though, is you don't take no for an answer. If you have your mind set to something, you will find a way to do it. So for the folks out there who, you know, have a dream, who are working their tails off, who are struggling to make things happen, you know, what's some skills or some lessons learned of not giving up, not quitting the way that you have? Yeah,
I mean, first of all, you've got to really have a desire to do whatever the thing is that you want to do, because if you don't, you'll give up pretty quick. The 200 mile an hour thing, it took me 25 years to do that.
Wow.
Neil Armstrong, the first man to walk on the moon, took me 12 years to interview, but I never gave up, and I got the interview before he passed away. I would say for your listeners, number one, find something that you're really passionate about, that you absolutely will not say, they will not say no to you. You'll just keep going back and back and back. Find something that's reasonable. Don't, at my age, I'm not going to become an Olympic figure skater. So, but I can go out and fly in the back of an F-16 or ride on a big wave in Nazaré, Portugal. So be realistic, be passionate. Again, you're going to get a lot of no's. If it's something unusual, people don't understand it, you have to educate them as to why you want to do it. What's the benefit for them if they're the supplier, whether it be the racetrack or the race car owner or the magazine? I mean, I have to pitch my stories to the editors, and they have to understand what I want to do. So I would just say never give up. It sounds easy, and honestly, when I look back in retrospect at a lot of these adventures, to me now they're commonplace. I did it. How hard can they be? I'm just a regular guy. So that's another thing. Once you do it, it downgrades in your mind, because if you can do it, anybody can do it. And that's part of the charm of why I write it up. You can do it too. You know, it's like, okay, it's exotic, but if you break it down, you can do it. So I would just say never give up, but be passionate. Find something that you really want to do, not something that someone else told you want to do. Okay?
Right. Something that speaks to your heart that you're willing to fight for.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say that.
I love that. I'll tell you another thing that fascinates me about you is the injuries.
Oh, yeah.
Can we go over some injury stories, please? Because what you do is dangerous. Like, let's be real. And you're still doing it to this day. To this day, you're still getting after it. But you did have a few slips here and there, and I would love to hear some of those risky moments, close calls, or injuries.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I've been lucky, given all the really dangerous things I've done, to only have been, I would say, slightly hurt, but interestingly hurt. I always look at risk versus reward, but I also look at perceived risk versus real risk, and there's a big difference. And if people can make that distinction before they try something, I think it helps a lot. Also, I know that when I go out and do something, it's a Forbes journalist. They do not want to kill me. They don't want the headline to be, what were they thinking? So they're giving me the best coach, the best driver as my driver coach, the best surfer if I'm out on a big wave, the best pilot, the best maintained plane. So that mitigates some of the risk.
Right.
But yeah, in terms of getting hurt, I've done some dumb stuff. I went bullfighting, broke 3 ribs a couple years ago.
Was that for an article?
Of course. I wouldn't just do it for fun. Yeah, I was out with the PBR, Professional Bull Riders, and really I was a rodeo clown. They called us bullfighters. But I had to get the bull back into the chute after he threw his rider because the rider's vulnerable.
Right.
So you got to get the bull
The
to
distraction,
chase,
right?
chase you.
Yeah.
Okay, right. And this bull picked me up, broke 3 of my ribs, threw me up against the wall. And the other two, luckily, rodeo clowns, bullfighters, got him away from me.
I mean, those things are powerful.
Oh.
They ragdoll humans like it's nothing. Like you're made of nothing.
My friends pull those pictures off the internet and laugh. They're all over the internet, and I just look at them and go, man, that's not funny, but the way I am in that picture looks kind of funny. But that was a dumb thing. I mean, you don't know what a wild animal's going to do. There was a lot of risk there. He could have stepped on my head. There could have been anything. Mm-hmm. The worst I was ever hurt was figure skating, believe it or not, with Sasha Cohen, the Olympic medalist. She came on my Forbes show years ago, and I was just fascinated by her ability to. She fell 2 times in her long program to win the Olympics, and she still got the silver medal. I've never heard of anything like that. You can't make mistakes in the Olympics. That's how good she was the last 3 minutes, and it fascinated me that she never gave up.
Yeah, she never gave. Most people would have just said that this is a wash.
Yeah,
but she still tried to change their mind, which is unique. And I started that episode, your interview with her.
Yeah, she's good.
She is incredible person.
Yeah, she's a mom now. She's 40. I've known her almost 20 years. But what happened was she told me that she knew I had the ability to drive fast and maybe I could teach her how to drive a Lamborghini at a high speed. And I said, sure, if you take me figure skating. So stupid. So we went out in California. I think it was the 405, and she lives in California, and we got it up. She got it up to about 125, 130 in no time. Great. Sasha Cohen's reflexes are great. So that was the dangerous part of the trip. So we go to the ice, whatever, and I've never been on skates, and I'm trying to do this, and of course I'm the Forbes adventurer, so I've got to try to do a spin or something, and she's like, no, that's not a good idea. You can barely stand up. No, I have to. The Forbes video crew is over there. And honestly, when I watched her warm up, I realized how fast these people go on their skates, and how dangerous it is, and how sharp the skate blades are and everything else. On TV, it looks like ballet. Mm-hmm. Go up close and watch it. So she said, okay, crouch like you're going to punch someone and swing your right arm, and you'll just circle around. You'll do a spin. And next thing I know, I'm in an ambulance. I don't remember anything. I hit the ice, level 3 concussion. I was knocked out for a couple minutes. Wow. Didn't know where I was, didn't know my name. And yeah, I'd go to the hospital and stay a night. And of course, they thought they killed me. So I was just like, I killed the Forbes adventurer, Mom. But the great thing about that story is that we made lemonade out of lemons, and mm-hmm. Sasha and I are good friends. We have been now, and I'm the godfather to her first kid. So
that's amazing.
She just turned 40. So that you would think of all the things I've done that wouldn't be the thing that hurt me the most. And then I would say getting shot, that hurt a lot.
You said that earlier. What's going on with that?
I was watching the military channel one night, and I saw this guy down in Colombia who makes bulletproof fashion clothing, shooting his employees.
Okay.
So they would understand what they were doing was important. If they made a mistake, somebody dies.
Gotcha.
So I was like, whoa, that's a good story. So I called him up. Yeah, come on down. I'll shoot you. So I went down to Bogota. And
didn't take much convincing?
No, but honestly, what I found out when I got down there is that he puts a little Kevlar patch where he's going to shoot you point blank. And I'm like, no, that's not how you would take the bullet in the field. There's no Kevlar. It's just your nylon polyester weave, and it's, mm-hmm. I want to be shot like that.
Right.
No, I can't do that. It's too dangerous. Well, your jacket's supposed to work. His wife, like me, she decided, okay, he came all the way down from New York. Miguel, do it. So he did it, and I had a bruise for about 6 weeks, about the size, it was just giant.
How did it feel?
It was like a Mike Tyson punch with, if you had a bullwhip and you can imagine somebody, the very end of it hitting you at the wrong time.
Right.
It was like a combination of both of those.
Oh my God.
And one thing interesting about it was, of course, he shoots you point blank because you don't want to move. if you move, if he shoots you from 10 feet, the bullets go on the same speed, but you have a chance of moving and you can shoot you somewhere else. But we practiced, and he said, put your hands behind your back and then count to 3 and I'll shoot you on 3, which we did several times before he actually did it. And then when we did it, he shot me on 2, which was a total surprise to me. And I thought the gun went off accidentally, and
That was so you were guaranteed to not move?
Yes. He was surprised me. And I just thought he was going to shoot again, and then he smiled and whatever. And the other thing is they had 100 workers, all Catholic, because it was in a South American country, and they were all like making signs of the cross while I was up there in front of all of them. They had rosaries on, and I'm just thinking, what am I doing?
That's called a red flag. You got people praying over you.
Yeah.
You're like, wait a second, what's going on here? Why are y'all doing that?
Well, they had seen it before with employees, but I don't think they realized that I was doing it without a net. Right. Without the Kevlar, it was dangerous.
Right.
And had he shot me, but either at the hip level or the rib level, he would have broken either my hip or my ribs, because the bullet goes in you. It just doesn't break the skin and it comes out. It's been pancaked by the weave. So, yeah, people say that was nuts. So, whatever. It made a good story.
That is nuts, but yes, you're right. That did make a good story.
Those are the only 3 times that I've been hurt to the point of, like, it hurt. There have been a lot of times where I've almost been killed, but I didn't get hurt in the process.
Like surfing?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, last year I went out to Nazaré, Portugal.
Wait, this was last year?
Yeah. Yeah.
I imagined you as like a young man.
No, I'm still young. Come on.
You are still young. I'm not saying that. But I was thinking like 20 years ago.
No.
10 years ago. You're saying that you went on one of the most biggest waves in the world that the earth can make a year ago. Yeah,
it's interesting how it came about. I was interviewing Garrett McNamara, the world record surfer from Hawaii, who, I don't know, it was 2011. He surfed an 80-foot wave in Nazaré. Nobody knew about Nazaré then. It was always Hawaii or Tahiti or Mavericks in California. And when he did that picture of him, he looks like a little matchstick on this giant wave, went around the world, and it went viral and made Nazaré famous.
Wow.
So
a picture did that for him.
Yeah, and an amazing video of him surfing that wave. Anyway, I was interviewing him. There's a series called The 100-Foot Wave on HBO, and they follow the lives of these big wave surfers, including Garrett. He's like the star of it. So I was interviewing him for a story, and at the end of the interview, just out of the blue, I said, "Hey, Garrett, if I come out to Nazaré when you're out there, in the fall, will you take me out on your jet ski?" He says, "Yeah, sure, come on out." So, where the waves at Nazaré start to break big around October into March, you don't know when in there they have surf forecasts. So we went out, my photographer and I went out, and we hung out for 2 weeks waiting for a big set to come in. Luckily, we got one, and Garrett happened to be there. So me, Garrett McNamara, Cotty Cotton, who's another giant wave surfer, and my photographer went out early in the morning when the waves were 60, 70 feet.
Wow.
And we took the skis out. And I just remember I had seen big waves in Hawaii, but nothing like this. And Garrett took me over to like a 35 to 40 footer, and he thought I would be impressed. And I said, "Yeah, but there's bigger ones out there." He said, "You want to go out there?" I said, "Yeah." He goes, "Okay." I didn't realize he's crazy.
Oh, jeez.
So out we went, and he pulled up on a 60-footer as it was about to break, and he said, "Look down to your right." And I could have dropped a quarter 6 stories into the ocean without hitting anything. And it was like, whoa.
That's amazing. I mean, I saw the picture. It looks like a waterfall. I mean, it looks massive.
Yeah. I mean, people should Google Nazaré and you'll see it's nuts. And yeah, I mean, we did it, and then we went off the back of it, obviously not to get sucked up into the barrel. And the ski tipped, and we were both thrown off into the water. And that was scary. I didn't realize how scary it was. I mean, I was just like, okay, what are we going to do now? And luckily the ski stayed close enough to us where it didn't go off, somewhere else. And neither of us were knocked out. So we got the ski, started to rock it till it flipped back. Garrett jumped on it. I didn't even have time to get on. I just grabbed that surfboard at the back, and we took off like 50 miles an hour before the next set of waves came.
Because you had a limited amount of time to get out of there before this next wave hits.
Yeah, waves tend to come in sets of 4. Oh. And then there's like a 1 minute or 2 minute respite between another set coming in. Yeah. So Garrett was smart enough to do this on the fourth wave of the set, so that if we did fall, if we did it on the third wave, I probably wouldn't be here.
Jeez.
So we had enough time, maybe a minute and a half, to get it together and get out of there. And to make it graphic for you, Cotty Cotton, who's a big wave surfer, and my photographer wouldn't come out where we were. They said, that's too dangerous. Garrett's taking Jim out. It's too dangerous.
Wow.
The other thing is, I asked Garrett later about, you ever get a thrill surfing these big waves, and you've done millions of them? I don't get much of an adrenaline rush. But when that jet ski flipped, I got an adrenaline rush.
Oh, no.
Mostly because he had my life in his hands. But so that was an amazing experience. I did it last year. I want to go back and do a 70-footer instead of a 60-footer, but that's a whole other deal.
That's amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Yeah.
With all the places you've been around the world, aside from getting hurt or close calls, was there ever dangerous places you had to go?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think of it in terms of terrorism or anything like that. I've never done any real embedded military stories. Most of the stuff I've done has been stateside, but pretty intense stuff with the Air Force, the military. I flew with the Blue Angels. That was a whole other thing with the Navy. But yeah, I mean, I did some pretty early stuff in the ex-Soviet Union when it just collapsed, and it's a little dicey there. There's a lot of crime. You had to be really careful. That's when I flew in the MiG. I flew a MiG up to 84,000 feet over there at Mach 2.6, MiG-25 Foxbat. But it was Wild West then, and you really had to be careful in your hotel, getting to your hotel. I think the funniest thing I remember, the first time I went to Russia was, before I went, I asked, how much is a cab from the airport to my hotel? And they said, it's about $50. So when I get out of the airport, I'm all ready. There's this big official taxi stand. And I went up and said, I'd like to get a taxi here. I said, how much? They go, $200. And I looked at them and said, I'll give you 50. They go, okay. There was I can't even imagine how many people just said, oh, okay, get in for the 200.
Right.
But that's the kind of place it was back then. And I don't know what it's like now, but it's an interesting place because they do have some extreme stuff you can do. I went to the North Pole with them on an icebreaker, nuclear-powered icebreaker. I flew in the MiG, as I said. I also did some parabolic weightlessness flights in their Aviation 76s over Moscow.
Is that when they dive bomb and you float through the air?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Yeah. How was that?
It's cool. What you do is you climb to about 30,000 feet, and then you're pulling maybe 1G, you're on the floor, and then you dive for about 10,000 feet. And while you're diving, you're weightless, and that's about 30 seconds. So you come up off the floor, and, I opened a bottle of Aviation, and out came these marbles. And caught them in my mouth, marbles of water.
Wow.
Just like the astronauts. And I learned quickly you did not want to be near the ceiling when the thing went into the other phase because you drop like a rock, which I did. Thank God there was padding.
Right.
But no, it was a great experience. I would say for me, though, more interesting was the MiG view because I saw the blackness of space, the curvature of the Earth, the atmosphere hanging over the Earth. And to me, that's more interesting than, say, a weightlessness flight. And so
that MiG went higher than the U-2?
Yeah.
How I wouldn't have thought that. I would have. When I hear U-2, I'm picturing that's the highest one.
Well, the U-2, we don't know how high the U-2 goes. The Air Force is very cagey about. They just say 70,000 feet. That you can't get them to say it's higher. That's it. I guess it's still proprietary. But the SR-71 was an 85,000 footer, maybe higher, probably higher. And the MiG-25 Foxbat was the equivalent in Russia of the SR-71.
Oh, gotcha.
So it was a fighter jet. And we went fast. Mach 2.6 is 2,000 miles an hour, something like that.
Oh, wow.
But the MiG flight was totally uncontrolled. I mean, we did the whole flight in 30 minutes.
That's fast.
And we burned about 5,000 pounds or gallons of fuel. I don't remember what it was, but the afterburners, and we went up. We were only at 84,000 feet for maybe 40 seconds, and then it was a dive down.
Wow.
In the U2, we were up there for 2.5 hours.
Can we go over your U2 story? I looked it up online. I saw the pictures. You look like a spaceman. And then your pictures in the aircraft are absolutely epic. It's just such a sight. And I would love to hear how you were able to do that and just kind of walk us through that experience.
Well, luckily I had done a number of stories with the Air Force. I've been to Minot, down to the missile silos where the guys have the keys. I've been up to Thule, Greenland, where they're looking for the missiles coming over the pole. I've been down to a launch at Cape Canaveral. I'd flown in the F-15 supersonic, the F-16 supersonic. So I'd done a lot of stories, but the piece de resistance would have been the U-2. So 6 years ago, I flew out to Beale Air Force Base, and I did everything but fly in the U-2. I did the chasing the U-2 as it landed, and I'll explain that. I got in the spacesuit, which is very claustrophobic, and then I also flew up in the T-38 to watch the U-2s take off. So I really did everything you have to do except fly in the U-2, and that took me 6 more years of bureaucracy with the Air Force to get it done.
Wow, that's amazing. You don't give up.
Well, very few people. I mean, Top Gear did it. I remember they did it, and I don't know of any other civilians that have done it.
It's incredibly rare, obviously.
Yeah, it's so rare that Jared Isaacman, the guy who just flew a bunch of people to space, he's a billionaire, and trusted the new spacesuit. He sent me a note, Jim, I've always wanted to do that.
Nice.
You can't buy that. It's
right.
the Air Force. So once I got there, I was kind of familiar with, and there's a lot of stops and starts, a lot of cancellations, postponements over those 6 years. It was bureaucratic. A lot of high-level people got involved, but they finally set a time last summer to do it. I went out there, had to train again in the suit. The suit is very claustrophobic. I had to be in that thing for 6 hours when I did the flight. So I knew it was going to be, you can't throw up. If you do, you'll choke in your vomit. You can't eat. So they put a straw through here, and you eat like apple pie through like this tube you squeeze. And
wow,
it's interesting. It's very.
What about going to the bathroom?
They give you something to hook up. It's kind of a catheter, and so you can use it, but I did not want to have to go pee, so I didn't drink anything for 12 hours. And of course, that's not recommended because of the dehydration. But I thought, I can handle it. I drive race cars. I sweat 5 pounds in an afternoon of sweat out, and so I know how to rehydrate. So, you can do it because these guys are up there 12 hours at a time.
That's crazy.
By themselves, over enemy territory, in
that claustrophobic suit where you can barely move.
Yeah.
That's terrifying.
And I'll tell you, the Red Bull guy, Felix Baumgartner, who finally jumped from 128,000 feet maybe 10 years ago and broke Joe Kittinger's record, Red Bull project was postponed for a couple of years. Everyone assumed it was because they were having problems with the capsule or whatever. No, Felix he couldn't get in the spacesuit long enough. He was too claustrophobic.
Wow.
So a lot of people can't do it.
Yeah.
A lot of the pilots in the U2 program wash out because they can't keep that suit on. So for me, it was a challenge, but I was able to pass that test. And you got 100% pure oxygen. You're carrying your oxygen with you. You do look like Major Tom or something. I mean, it's huge, this suit, and it's bulky, and it's hard to do anything with. And so the actual flight, it was dicey in terms of whether it was going to happen or not, because they made me do a lot of things that were very difficult to do, like pull the pin out of the ejection seat under to arm it, and then you have all this stuff on your helmet, and I don't even want to go into it, but suffice to say, we did take off. It's about 40 to 45 minutes till you get to 70,000 feet. And you're growing up fairly slow, a steep angle, but there's no G's involved. It's not like a fighter jet where you're not moving more like 100, 200 miles an hour. And then you get up there. And it's just this magical black, blue, and the ground. And you can see hundreds of miles in all directions. I could see Golden Gate Bridge. I could see Lake Tahoe. I could see El Cap. I could see Beale Air Force Base.
Wow.
All, in the same place.
That's wild.
It was, there's the uncomfortability of being in the suit, but then the euphoria of seeing, what you're seeing. Fortunately, unfortunately, they had a GoPro on me, but that was the only thing they had. They didn't have anything looking forward. And as we climbed, all this frost got behind me on the cockpit. You couldn't see anything but me. And I realized that. My pilot told me, so I unclipped the GoPro and I faced it forward, and I took those shots with the GoPro that you see of space or near space. Had I not done that, we wouldn't have those shots. So
nice.
But yeah,
they say looking at Earth from that high up gives you a different perspective of the world. You know, a lot of people that have gone up there, like astronauts, you know, they say they just look at humanity different or the world different. Did you get any sort of feelings like that when you were that high up looking down?
Well, you got to remember, I'd done the MiG before, so I had that sort of epiphany back then, but that was like 1999, so it was a long time ago. I did not realize the opportunity I had back there with the MiG, and there is something else I'll talk to you about with the MiG versus the U-2, which is the spacesuit issue. But yeah, I mean, you do, you know, no flat earthers up there. You immediately see how curved the Earth is, and see that blackness. You know, you're used to seeing blue in the daytime, and then you see that, and your brain doesn't comprehend it. And then you see, like, you can see all these things. There's no borders. It's not like a map where you see all these lines, California, Nevada. You don't see all these lines like you do. So it is kind of a unifying humanity experience. Now, I can only imagine when you're all the way up, you know, a space station, where you can see like thousands of miles around, and you can see countries with no borders. But yeah, it's... Again, though, you're dealing with, oh my God, am I going to have to go to the bathroom?
You have a lot on your mind.
Yeah, oh my God, I hope he doesn't hit the coffin corner and we have to eject at 70,000 feet. And I didn't even know what the coffin corner was until I came back, thank God. But the other thing I do want to talk about is in the MiG, I just had a pressure suit on, not even a G suit and an oxygen mask and a helmet. No pressure space suit. So if anything happened up there where our cabin depressurized, I was dead in 3 seconds.
It was very dangerous.
I didn't know it at the time. And when I went to Beale, I asked them, why do you wear these spacesuits? You have a cabin pressurized and stuff. And they go, well, if that thing depressurizes, we're dead. And I said, oh, when I went to Russia and did the MiG, you're crazy.
So you realized in that moment, oh, snap, that was actually really dangerous.
Yeah, I didn't know at the time.
Well, would you have still done it?
Probably.
I think you would have.
Because it's not like an extended thing. Like, I'm not flying to the space station, you know, where it's only a few minutes. But again, it was risky. And I do remember getting into the MiG and being strapped in, and you're on a separate cockpit. You're not with the pilot. He's behind you. You communicate with a radio through your helmet. But as I'm strapping in, the pilot says to me, Jim, if I say eject, 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 this is not command for discussion, only for fulfillment. Okay. Broken English. And he says, but you see this handle here, do not touch it. Oh, why not? You could eject me.
Oh, no.
Okay, so the whole time I'm up there, don't drop your camera on that handle. And then, interestingly, I'd signed so many release forms before we did it. I'm strapped in, ready to go, and they bring one more form out, and it's in Russian.
Oh, no.
And I have to sign it, or I don't go. I signed it. I don't know what it said to this day, but that's Russia. So to me, the Russians don't value human life the same way that Americans do. And so I think, you know, we have a lot more checks and balances here. For example, you know, this week training for the F-16 flight, there was a tremendous amount of backups and things that American pilots have where I don't think the Russians do. And they have very capable aircraft, but also, you know, things happen. And I think here in America, I certainly feel safer doing these kind of things.
Yeah, I mean, even my brief moment with you getting your helmet fitted, the way that they were inspecting the plane, I mean, everything's got to be just right, just safe enough. They were very particular about it.
Well, look, it turned out that we were supposed to fly yesterday. They found a little malfunction, probably could have flown with it, but no, they are fixing it down. We're going to do the flight on Monday. But again, that's how thorough they are here at Eglin versus, say, at Zhukovsky Air Base in Russia, where I was. It's like, get him in there, let's go, get him down.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So that was, I would say that MiG flight was one of the highlights of my life, as was the U-2 flight, because as a baby boomer, I grew up watching Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin walk on the moon. I saw John Glenn orbit the Earth. Lucky enough in my adulthood to interview those guys and all that, but to actually experience it somewhat, what they did, and to see it is pretty cool. And also to break the sound barrier. I've actually broken the sound barrier in 6 different aircraft.
Oh, wow.
Supersonic. This will be 7 tomorrow or Monday. I've driven over 200 miles an hour in 13 different cars, whether they be Lambos or Ferraris or Bugattis or Indy cars or stock cars or whatever. So, those are things I'm proud of. But at the same time, the aircraft stuff, I was just a backseat participant. Lucky to be doing it and lucky to be writing about it. The race car stuff I'm driving, and that's an active thing. So I would say it's more dangerous.
Absolutely. I'm kind of curious, A, how much longer do you want to do this? And B, what have you not done that is on your bucket list?
In terms of how long I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it until I can't do it anymore, or until I start to phone it in terms of the stories. It's harder and harder, though, to find new things. As any mountain climber will tell you, you climb a 7,000 meter peak, you want to go do an 8,000 meter peak or whatever. It's always up the ante because of the adrenaline rush and all that. Like Garrett, he said he doesn't get a rush out of surfing those 80-foot waves anymore. He's done it too often. When you think about the first time you did it, it was pretty cool.
Right.
So I'm going to keep doing it. The other thing I do, which we haven't talked about, is I interview a lot of very famous adventurers as Q&As in Forbes. And I've done Elon Musk and Buzz Aldrin and Neil Armstrong and Sir Edmund Hillary and Roger Bannister and Edward Teller and just a lot of rock stars. And so, there's a whole thing. I'll be able to do that forever, hopefully, unless I get Alzheimer's. I always say, if I get Alzheimer's, take me to my website and show me those stories and tell me to read them and say, that was you.
Yeah.
But no, I would say as long as Forbes will let me do it and as long as I'm still good at it. I do know that I don't have the physical capabilities anymore to, say, climb Everest, which I'd never want to do given the mess up there now with all those people. So some of the more physical stuff, I probably have to be careful, but I can still be passive in airplanes and stuff like that. I would like to do a carrier landing with the Navy. That's one of my bucket list items. Of course, I would like to go to space all the way up. Mm-hmm. I had a ticket on Virgin Galactic for a while, which does take you suborbital, but the program there is, I just didn't like what they were doing, and I got my deposit back. But I would like to do a suborbital ride. The nice thing about people like you're going to be able to do it for a pretty good price because, like the airline industry, the more Jeff Bezos's and Elon Musk and Richard Branson's privatize this business, the cheaper it's going to get, and you're going to be able to do it. So I envy you. You'll get to see that view if you want to, and you seem like the kind of guy who would like to try that.
Oh, hell yeah.
But yeah, there are things. Mario Andretti always says to me, Jim, have you driven 300 yet? Because he teases me. He knows that I did the Bugatti, and it's faster than he's ever driven, actually, he tells me. Yeah, I mean, I'd like to get into a drag racer and try that. I've done it at a moderate speed at Frank Hawley. I learned how to do it, but I know these guys at NHRA and the guys who go from 0 to 330 in 4 seconds, less than 4 seconds. And that intrigues me. Mm-hmm. If I could do a ride along with one of them, maybe. I love to give rides to people around the country in the stock cars with the NASCAR racing experience. It's not so much the laps, it's the look on their faces when they come in. Mm-hmm. Oh my God, that's what race car drivers do. They watch it on TV and it's just driving circles. Well, there's a lot more to it than just driving in circles, let me tell you. When they get in, they can feel the G's, the smell of the fuel, the tires, the sound. the wind, everything. It's a whole body experience.
Could I ever tag along with you?
Yeah, anytime you want. Come on down. No, I give friends rides all the time.
I would love
for
that.
nothing. Yeah,
I would love that.
and you can also drive there, but I always recommend the ride first because you go a lot faster than the students do. I mean, I pass students like they're standing still. In fact, that's one of my biggest fears, are going to cut in front of me. But yeah, come on down. I do Daytona a lot, but I do Charlotte sometimes. I mean, I've done all the tracks: Kentucky, Michigan, Fontana in California, Las Vegas. So, wherever you happen to be, if you're down there when I'm doing it, yeah, come on down.
Oh, yeah, we'll have to stay in touch then.
I've taken some famous people. I took an astronaut named Sean Proctor who flew as part of Polaris Dawn with Jared Isaacman. Taken Michael Waltrip, the two-time Daytona 500 winner. I took him around. Took Joe Kittinger around, the guy who jumped from that balloon 102,000 feet back in 1960. So to me that's kind of cool to give these guys who've done extreme things a different experience. I took a Thunderbirds pilot around, Michael Brewer at Vegas Speedway right across from Nellis. He had given me a supersonic ride in an F-15 years before, so I wanted to repay him. So I took him, and I thought he'd be bored. He's like, "Oh my God, those lateral G-forces! I'm not used to that." Right. So he liked it.
Yeah. So
to answer your question, I'm going to do it as long as I can, or until somebody says I can't, or until I feel I can't do certain things. In other words, if they become dangerous to me, then I'll stop doing those particular things.
Okay. And, you spoke a little bit about people that you've interacted with. One of the last things I want to talk to you about here is the memorable people you've interviewed, the people who've had a lasting impact on you.
There's so many of them. And from so many different walks of life and for so many different reasons. And I'm assuming you probably want to hear some of the high profile people. I would say the most interesting interview I've ever done was Dr. Edward Teller, the father of the hydrogen bomb. He was like an Einstein, Oppenheimer kind of. He was involved in the Manhattan and all that. Very, very fascinating guy. Learned a lot from he's walking history. He asked me as many questions about physics as I asked him. He wanted to know what I knew. He wanted to know what I knew about history and the McCarthy trials and Oppenheimer and the Manhattan Project. So that was fascinating to be able to talk to somebody who was really important in history. Sir Edmund Hillary was interesting, the first man to climb Everest. What I remember most about the Hillary interview, other than he was so humble, was I asked him, what do you remember about being on top of Everest back in '53? And he said, well, I looked around to see if there were any signs of Mallory having been here in 1924. There's still that mystery, did Mallory make it? And most people think no. And he said, I found nothing. Like I thought I wouldn't find anything either. And then I looked out at the big Peak Makalu over the Khumbu Valley. I think Makalu is one of the top 5, but it hadn't been climbed at the time. And I started working out a route because no one had ever seen it from so high. And then I realized, oh my God, here I am standing on top of the world, and I'm always thinking about my next adventure.
Wow.
And that to me was like, wow. I try to be in the moment when I'm doing whatever it is. But, once you've done it, it's almost like, okay, what's next? How can I top this? Especially in the U2. When I landed, I'm like, well, how can I top this? No pun intended. And so with the Hillary comment, it made me realize how adventurers think, and it made me try to think differently and enjoy the actual moment that you're doing what you're doing.
And it sounds to me like you get a lot of enjoyment out of the process too.
The process is people always ask me, Jim, what are you afraid of? Like this jet, okay. I'm not afraid of the ride. I'm more afraid of, will I pass the physical exam at the base? Will the weather be okay? Is there going to be something wrong with the plane that stops us from flying? Those are the things that bother me most. And the ride itself, I just trust the pilot. And I also sometimes, I look at myself as an actor. Actors can be really shy or they can be whatever. And then they become this other person, and that allows them to become unshy or whatever. And so if I'm afraid, I then put on the Jim Clash adventure outfit, and then it's like, okay, you got to do the job, you got to get it done, you got to write about it. I was worried about having to pee in the jets, whatever. The little things. I mean, I'm afraid to go into a department store shopping by myself. I can't do it without a person with me because I'm afraid of salespeople. But I'll get in a car and drive 250 miles an hour. So everybody has fears. And that's a question I ask all of these famous people. What are they afraid of and how do they deal with fear?
Wow.
And everyone has a different response. And I also ask them, where were they? What were they thinking when they did their great thing? And it's very rarely what you and I think they're thinking. I mean, I can give you an example. Bill Anders took that amazing Earthrise photo, the Earth rising over the moon, which was the photo of the 20th century.
Mm-hmm.
And when I interviewed him, I said, what were you thinking at that moment? You took that picture. He said, you really want to know? I said, yeah. He said, I'm off mission. I'm taking pictures of the Earth when I'm supposed to be taking pictures of the place where the Apollo 11 could land, the backside of the moon. I'm wasting film. I'm going to get in trouble. That's what his thoughts were. And then it becomes the iconic photo of the 20th century. Buzz Aldrin, the first time I met him and interviewed him, and I got to be friends. I am friends with Buzz. He's still alive. He's in his 90s now. I was a young reporter and what did it feel like to walk on the moon? And he looks at me and he says, can you give me a multiple choice list of answers about how it should have felt? As far as I was concerned, we were proceeding with the checklist. There were a lot of things to do. One of them was to step on the moon. I suppose now I could manufacture all kinds of wondrous things that I had as far as feelings, but I was just proceeding with the checklist. And that was the time it made me feel so stupid and small. But now looking back on it, he was telling the truth. It wasn't some, wow, it was so wondrous. No. And so when I ask people those questions, I get all kinds of different answers. And, I can go over and over these things, but some of the more interesting people, I can just tell you, I've interviewed a lot of Olympians. Mm-hmm. John Carlos and Tommy Smith were two of the most interesting. If your audience can remember the 1968 Olympics in Mexico City, Tommy and John put their arms up with black gloves fists and protested for civil rights. Mm-hmm. Very famous photo. I got to talk to them about their lives afterwards, how their lives were ruined. But to me, that's one of the iconic photos of the 20th century. They had the guts to do that. That was fascinating to interview those two guys.
Yeah. What did they say about it after all these years?
They said, number one, when we were up there, we were afraid we were going to be shot. So we were listening for a rifle shot or something, which I never thought of, really.
Yeah.
And then they were thrown out of the Olympic Village, and they came home to the U.S., and they got all this bad press and death threats. And, these were two of the greatest sprinters of all time who won for America, in the 220 or 200 meters, the 100 meters. And but now, many, many years later, they're looked at as kind of heroes and being part of the initiation of the civil rights movement, black power, not supposed to say black power, but, African Americans getting an equal say in voting and other things. And they've actually built a statue at San Jose State where they graduated of them with their fists up in the air.
Wow.
So
complete 180.
Yeah. But yeah, they suffered for it.
Yeah.
And I asked both of them, if you had to do it again, would you do it? Yep. They both said, yep, absolutely. So.
And did they lose their medals from that?
They never gave them back. They never stripped them of their medals. They couldn't.
Okay.
They might have wanted them back, but I don't think they gave them back. But if you look in the record books, they're still there as whatever, first and third in the 100 meters.
Was there a guy who did not raise his hand up?
Peter Norman was in the middle. He was from Australia. He won the silver. Tommy won the gold, and John Carlos won the bronze. He had a patch on his for civil rights, so he was with them, but he wasn't willing to put his hand up with the gloves. It was, again, for me to and in the rock and roll world, which is a whole other thing. I've gotten to meet these amazing singers that were on the radio when I was a kid, like Paul Simon, Art Garfunkel, these people who I idolized, and I've gotten to interview them and meet them, and that's one of the beauties of being a journalist. You get to meet pretty cool people, and so I've been blessed in that area. I just wrote a book called Amplified, 11 of the great rockers of the 60s interviewed in there. Grace Slick, Roger Daltrey, Art Garfunkel. So my beat at Forbes is extreme adventure and rock and roll, classic rock and roll.
Hell yeah. I love that. And that's the vibe that you gave me right away. I knew you were into music as soon as I met you.
Well, look at my name, Clash. People think it's not a real name. Is that a real name? Yeah, it's a real name.
You got a cool name, Jim Clash. I mean, you're never going to forget that.
Well, honestly, it saved me on the Matterhorn because when I went to climb the Matterhorn, my guide took everything out of my pack that wasn't absolutely essential because it was going to be a really close call whether we made it to the top or not with the energy and all that, my fitness level. So when I got to the top, there was no camera. She took the camera out and left it at the base camp. And these two Swiss guys were up there and they saw this and they said, "Would you like a photo on top of the Matterhorn?" I'm like, "Yeah." So we got one shot of me with my hand up with my ice axe and Kathy, my guide. And that was it. And I knew I'd never see these guys again. So I said, "My last name is Clash, like the rock band." They go, "Oh, we know the Clash. We know the Clash." And I said, "And I work at Forbes magazine in New York." "Oh, Forbes. They have editions in Europe." And then I never saw him again, and I thought, that's I'm going to see that. And 6 weeks later, there's an email comes over the. They said, "Are you the guy who so desperately wants his photo from the top of the Matterhorn?" They had tracked me down.
Wow.
Because they could remember that name and they could remember Forbes. And they sent me the negative across the ocean, and I ran that on the cover of my first book.
Wow.
So the name helped me.
Yeah. It's so memorable. It got you your picture.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
But that, again, it's like the Matterhorn is the mountain most mountain climbers want. It's a beautiful mountain, but it's dangerous. It's killed over 500 people.
Jeez.
It's straight up. I'm sure if listeners probably know what it is, it's on the Swiss-Italian border, and it just goes straight up like a block. And so, yeah, I mean, there's so many things I could talk about, Josh. It's I feel, but I like talking about these, so thank you for letting me at least talk a little bit.
Yes. I love talking to you, Jim. But I have one last question for you as we wrap things up.
Okay.
You've done incredible things. You've lived an insane life and have done, there's only one Jim Clash, right? And you've done so many inspirational things, so many articles, captured so many stories. What is the legacy that you hope to leave behind?
Well, I mean, what I want to do is show people, as I said earlier, that an average person can push himself or herself to the limit and achieve their dreams. And if you're lucky enough, like I am, to have somebody, a magazine or something, support you or pay for it, to help you pay for it, it's a dream job. And so I just want people to know that if you work hard and you can be an average guy, you can do all the things I've done, because I'm not special at all. But I've managed to take average and make it look interesting.
Hell yeah.
Yeah,
I like that.
I want to keep doing it. So, you're young. How old are you?
39.
Yeah, so, you're not even 40 yet. Come on, I got a couple of years on you. Follow it. And honestly, I'm jealous. You're going to go to space, and you're going to do it for a reasonable amount of money. So if I can make it long enough, maybe if they bring it down, I'll do it. But wear a spacesuit. It's dangerous.
Okay, will do. Well, Jim, we talked about your upbringing today. Your fascination with science. We talked about you joining the Forbes team all those years ago. You've been with them 30 plus years now. We went into your epic travels, your close calls, your injuries, all the amazing things you've done. And then we kind of ended it with the interesting people that you've been exposed to, that you've been able to interview and get this really cool insight from. You've lived this incredible life, and you're here at Eglin Air Force Base with us. We're going to get you on a jet. I just want to tell you, as an airman, thank you for spending time with us. It means a lot when civilians have an interest in what our life is like and what we do. It means the world to us. So, I just want to thank you for coming out to Team Eglin, spending time with us, and letting us, feel very special. So thank you.
Well, I mean, I just have to say thank you for your service. I have to say I've probably been at 10 or 11 Air Force bases now and done pretty amazing stories because you guys have let me do it. I hope it helps with recruiting. But the thing I'm always amazed by is the caliber of the people I meet. They are top notch. They're nice people. They're well spoken. I mean, we could use more of that outside of the military. Honestly, they're moral. Again, maybe they just show me the best people. I don't know, but I don't think so. From the generals to the, the maintainers or whatever, they all have that same passion for what they do, and they do it for their country and for me and for other people. And so I just want to thank you for your service. Thank you for having me on. I hope this was a little bit of insight into what people can do if they put their mind to it and are passionate about it.
Absolutely. There's a glass ceiling, with the marathon, with climbing Mount Everest. When someone does it, it kind of opens everyone's eyes to what's possible. And Jim, that's you. That's what you do. You lift the veil and let us see what's truly possible to accomplish. So I want to thank you again, Jim, for joining us on the Hero Front podcast. And ladies and gentlemen, this was the hero's journey of the legendary Jim Clash. And we're out.